Hello and welcome to a special episode of What's in a Story. Today's episode is in celebration of two famous personalities of the same family through a translated work and the reflection of the same in a very famous film. May 12th happens to be the birth anniversary of Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury, who was born in 1863, and the 2nd of May is the birth anniversary of Satyajit Ray, who was born in 1921. Upendrakishore was the grandfather, Satyajit Ray was his grandson. Today's episode highlights how these two personalities were connected through a very special storyline, which remains important because of various reasons even today, and a very, very popular story even today. How are these two connected and what is the storyline? Let's find that out. About today's story. This is a story from my book, Collected Stories of Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury by Aleph Book Company. This book is an English translation of all the 63 stories of the two Bengali books by Upendrakishore, Tuntunir Boi, which was published in 1910, and Golpomala, which was published somewhere between 1910 and 12. The book Tuntunir Boi is a collection of fables, while Golpomala has not only fables but many folklore from across the world, which Upendrakishore rewrote in Bengali. Many of these stories were part of Bengali children's magazine Sandesh, which was started by him but unfortunately stopped at his untimely death. It was revived by his son Sukumar Ray once again, but once again stopped as Sukumar Ray suddenly passed away at a very young age. Finally, many years later, it was revived by Upendrakishore's grandson, Satyajit Ray. Upendrakishore specially collected these stories for both Tuntunir Boi and Golpomala from various parts of Moymonsinho district, which is in present-day Bangladesh. Upendrakishore was a prolific writer, poet, illustrator and publisher, and his name is specially known in the area of children's literature in Bengali. He was also the first printer and publisher to introduce modern block making, including half-tone and color block making in South Asia. He is the father of noted writer, poet and illustrator Sukumar Ray, and grandfather of auteur Bharat Ratna and Oscar awardee Satyajit Ray. The title of today's story is quite interesting as it evokes many layers of excitement and often curiosity amongst people the world over. Whenever one hears the title, which is Gupi Gyen and Bagha Byen, or which can be explained as Gupi the singer and Bagha the instrumentalist. But why so? Because the name is practically known through the very famous feature film in Bengali by the same name, Gupi Gyen or Bagha Byen, made in 1968 by raconteur Bharat Ratna and Oscar awardee Satyajit Ray. This is a 132 minutes long black and white feature film, also available with English subtitles, and is also referred to by its English name, The Adventures of Gupi and Bagha. The film boasts of a stellar cast and music and remains to be amongst an important topic of discussion both amongst film lovers and others all over the world. However, what might not be known to many is the fact that this film is based on a story by Satyajit's grandfather, Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury, and was first published as part of the book Golpomala sometime between 1910 and 11. Unfortunately, Upendrakishore passed away at a young age in 1915. Now, here is something more interesting. It is the fact that this original story written by Upendrakishore is mainly and quite vastly different from the storyline of the film of Satyajit Ray. Of course, the beginning and some main points and sections remain the same. Say, for example, the main characters of the story and the film are indeed a singer and a person, an instrumentalist who plays the dholak. And both of them are extremely poor at their skills, so much so that they are thrown out of the respective villages because the villagers could no longer listen to their quote-unquote practice. Secondly, they do meet a king of ghosts who grants them wishes, and as a result of that, they do get some very interesting and wonderful magical powers. And finally, using these magical powers, they do land up at a king's palace, and at the very end of the story, even along with the help of this magical powers, manages to stop an impending war. But apart from this basic structure, the main storyline is otherwise vastly different from the movie. But something that runs as a connecting link across both the movie as well as the story, the main story, is the very fact that it's a story about music, bringing peace, music, connecting the dots across boundaries, music, trying to find a voice and rendering a voice to the voiceless. Thus, it is also important to highlight that it's a story of not only music alone, but also of perseverance and determination, and that can be translated into holding on to your dreams in the middle of all odds, or finding strength in spite of all obstacles. Today, let's celebrate this power of music on June 21st, World Music Day, connecting it to this message of the World Music Day. Here's an important message from the original story of two musicians, Gupi and Bagha, music cutting across all kinds of differences. Follows the original story of Gupi Gyen and Bagha Byen by Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury from my book Collected Stories of Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury by Alip Book Company. The story. Gupi and Bagha, a singer and an instrumentalist. This is the translation of the Bengali story by Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury, titled Gupi Gyen and Bagha Byen, or Gupi Gyen or Bagha Byen. do you know how to sing? Well, today I will tell you a story of a man named Gupi who could sing only one song. Gupi was the son of a grocer named Kanu Kain. Since Gupi could sing and the rest of the villagers could sing nothing at all, they would fondly call him Gupi Gyen, meaning Gupi the singer. Gupi knew only one song, which he sang all the time. In fact, so fond was he of this one song that he simply could not go without singing it. It would really suffocate him if he could not sing it every day. This was his life. Unfortunately, whenever he would sing at home, all the customers in his father's shop would run away. And if he sang in the fields, then all the cows would flee, breaking loose from their yokes. Finally, customers slowly stopped coming to his father's shop altogether. And the cowherd stopped taking his cows out for grazing. And then one day, Kanu, completely frustrated, chased Gupi away with a big fat stick. Gupi ran into the fields where the group of cowherds sat. They too chased him away with their sticks. Gupi kept on running and finally reached the jungle. There he sat down to practice his song. Once again he began to sing. Now, very close to Gupi's village, there was another man named Pachu Pine. His son loved to play dholak, a type of a drum played with bare hands or sometimes with a drumstick as well. But he did so in a strange manner. He would play furiously, nodding his head, moving his feet and rolling his eyes, baring his teeth and frowning all the while as he played. This would make everyone stare in amazement and they would remark, "Aha ha ha, ho 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 ho." Finally, when Pachu Pine would shriek and growl and snarl like a tiger, the frightened onlookers would fall flat on the ground in an attempt to flee. So they called him Bagha Byen, that is Bagha, the instrumentalist. It was by this name which people knew him. Nobody could remember his real name. Bagha loved to play his dholak dearly. So passionate he was about playing it that he would tear the instrument nearly every other day. Pachu, Bagha's father, grew really tired of this and finally there came a day when he could no longer afford more dholaks. But why should that stop Bagha's music? So the villagers told Pachu, "If you are unable to afford a dholak, let us all pool in some money and buy him one. We have such a gifted musician in our village. We should encourage him and see to it that the music never stops." So, everyone chipped in to buy a dholak for Bagha. And what a massive one that was. The mouth of the dholak was 4.5 feet long, and it had a very sturdy leather covering made from buffalo hide. Bagha was ecstatic, and very happily he remarked, "I will hence only play on this." So he immediately began to play his new dholak, and this continued for 1.5 months straight. But this drove his family and neighbors to the brink of insanity. We do not know what would have happened if it had continued like that for a few days more. But one day the villagers approached Bagha carrying sticks in their hands and begged him, "Bagha, you are a gem, but please go play your dholak elsewhere or it will drive us all mad. In return, we will give you 10 pots full of mithai." That is, sweetmeats. What else could Bagha do? He left for another village with his dholak. But even there, he was driven away within a couple of days. This continued for a long time. Whenever Bagha would go, he would be sent away. Finally, he deduced a plan. He would roam around through fields the whole day long, and every time he would feel hungry, he would go to his village and play the dholak. The people would gather and hurriedly give him something to eat so that Bagha could satiate his hunger and leave at once. The villagers would then heave a sigh of relief and say, "Saved, at least for the time being." Now this continued until the villagers stopped giving him food altogether. And if Bagha began to play his dholak, a large mob would gather, not only from his village but even from the adjoining ones, and chase him with sticks. Finally, he decided, enough is enough. I do not need to live in the middle of such idiots. I would rather be eaten by a tiger. At least, I will continue with my music. And so Bagha flung the strap of the dholak across his shoulder and left for the jungle as well, just like Gupi. And in the same jungle, Gupi was also sitting and practicing his favorite song. In the jungle, Bagha had a wonderful time. There was no one to chase him. Forget about being eaten by a tiger, there wasn't even a bear in sight. But there was one terrifying animal, but Bagha could never see or locate it. He could only hear him from a distance and he trembled in fear. "Baba re, what is this? If it comes here even once, it will gobble me up along with my dholak." And you know in reality what that was? That terrifying animal was none other than our Gupi. And the sound which used to scare Bagha was actually Gupi singing at the other end of the forest. The same forest. Gupi, on the other hand, would also tremble at the beating of Bagha's dholak. You see, neither had met each other till then. Finally, one day, Gupi decided, "I will lose my life if I continue living here in this jungle. Let me escape while there is still time." So, he tiptoed out of the forest only to find, another man exiting the forest at the same time from the other end and carrying a massive dholak on his head. Gupi was quite amused. "There, who are you?" "I am Bagha Byen." "Who are you?" "I am Gupi Gyen." "Where are you off to?" "Well, I am off to a place where people will accept me as I am. The people in my village are all idiots. They understand nothing about music. So I have decided to come away here into this jungle with my dholak. But I must leave as I keep hearing some horrible noises of a beast inside the forest. I want to escape before anything happens, so I am off." "I too am running away after hearing the same frightening noises. Do you remember from which direction the sounds were coming from?" Gupi asked Bagha. I think from under a banyan tree from the eastern parts of the jungle." I see. That wasn't an animal." "Actually, that was me. You had heard me singing. But I know the animal growls under the harad tree in the western part of the jungle." "Oh no, that was the sound of my dholak, not a wild animal. I used to live there, you see." When the confusion was resolved and they realized that they actually had been fleeing from each other's music, Gupi and Bagha burst out laughing. Still, in the throes of laughter, Gupi remarked, "Brother, you are as much a Gyen as I am a Byen. Now if we stick together, I'm sure we can achieve something in life." Bagha loved the idea. Then they sat planning and after much discussion decided to perform in front of the Raja of the kingdom. They were sure that the Raja would be elated upon listening to them and would either give them half of his kingdom or get them married to his daughters. So, the ecstatic duo of Gupi and Bagha started for the royal palace, frolicking, dancing and humming all the way. Soon, they reached the banks of a very long river which they had to cross to reach the king. Though a large ferry, a kea, stood on the banks, the boatman asked for money to ferry them across. Now, the poor duo, just out of the jungle, didn't have a single paisa with them. They requested the boatman, "Brother, we don't have any money, but we can entertain you while you take us to the other side." Now this idea really appealed to the other travelers on the boat, and they agreed to collect money, pool in money that is, to pay for Gupi and Bagha's passage, provided they play some music along the way. The boatman, already curious about Bagha's large dholak, agreed quite easily. Gupi and Bagha sat on the boat and they started on the journey. With plenty of difficulty, the passengers adjusted their seats to make space for Gupi, Bagha and the large dholak to sit right in the middle. By then, the boat had reached midstream. Right then, Gupi cleared his throat, hummed at first and then broke into a full-throated song. His song, the only song he knew. Bagha too joined in, playing his dholak with all his might. What about the other passengers? Well, they received such a sudden scare that in an attempt to flee, many fell from their seats, others hugged each other in fright, and in the middle of all the commotion, the boat toppled over. Oh, what a mess that was! Fortunately, Gupi and Bagha held on to the massive dholak and were saved from drowning. But sadly, they realized their dream of reaching the palace had ended. After floating in the river the whole day, they finally reached the banks of a great big jungle. It was so dense and dark that one would be afraid to enter it even during the day. Gupida, this looks terrible. What do we do now? What else to do? Gupi said. I will sing and you play. When we are close to being hunted by a tiger, why should we fall short in showing him our talents? Well, right you are, Dada. Bagha agreed somehow. If we have to die, let us end our lives like celebrated musicians and not like foolish rural ghosts. So, the duo forgot about their wet clothes and ill faith and once again started to sing in full swing. Since Bagha's dholak was wet, it produced a very damp and deep sound, and since Gupi was very sad at the mere thought of meeting death, his voice too sounded grim and very serious. You can imagine what a wonderful song that was. As they continued to sing, the day turned into noon, and soon it became evening, and finally it was night. But the duo kept up their melancholic and beautiful music, at least beautiful to their ears. Suddenly, they realized something was happening around them. Hazy, black, tall figures were peeping from behind branches and disappearing immediately. These were ghosts whose eyes burned as bright as furnaces and their teeth were as large and pointed as radishes. It was enough to make Bagha stop playing. Now Gupi and Bagha were frightened out of their lives. They stood stupefied, their mouths gaping, heads bent, backs slouched, and legs trembling in fear. Every bone rattled in their body, including their teeth. They were frozen to the ground and could not move at all. Surprisingly, the group of ghosts did not do any harm. In fact, they were very happy listening to Gupi and Bagha's music, and they had come actually to request them to play their songs at the wedding of their royal prince, the son of Goda, their king. Seeing that the music had stopped, they said in a nasal voice, "Why did you stop? Play on, play. Their words gave Gupi and Bagha some courage, and they thought, Papa, this is good. Let us sing and see what happens. And they resumed their performance. Gradually, one by one, all the ghosts came down from the tall branches and started to dance, encircling both Gupi and Bagha. What a scene that was! Never in their lives had Gupi and Bagha seen such an appreciative audience. The entire night was spent in song and dance, and when it was almost dawn, it was time for the ghosts to leave before daybreak. They called the duo nearer and said, "Come with us. Come to Goda's son's marriage. We will see that you get handsomely rewarded." "But we want to go to the palace, the king's palace," Gupi replied. The ghosts were insistent. "You can go later. You first come with us. Perform for us. We will reward you handsomely." Gupi and Bagha set off with the ghosts for their home. Now you can guess the beautiful performance that followed. There's no need to describe that. You can imagine that, right? After the grand marriage celebrations, while leaving, the ghosts asked, "We are very happy. We want to reward you. What do you want?" "We want to make people happy with our music." "So be it," the ghosts answered. "If someone begins to listen to your music, they will stand stupefied and will not be able to move till you have finished your song. Now, what else do you want?" "We want to never fall short of food." At this, the ghost produced a cloth bag, handed it over and said, "At any point in time, you can fetch whatever you want to eat just by putting your hand into this cloth bag. Now, what else do you want?" By now, Gupi was perplexed. He didn't know what else to ask and said, "Well, I really can't understand what else to ask for." The ghost smiled and presented them with a pair of shoes and said, "Wear this, take this and wear them, and they will take you anywhere you want to go." Now everything was sorted. Gupi and Bagha bid goodbye to the band of ghosts, wore the shoes and said, "We want to go to the king's palace." And in an instant, the massive jungle disappeared and Gupi and Bagha found themselves right in the front of a large house with massive gates. They had never seen such a beautiful large edifice. The shoes had indeed transported them to the palace. But there was a problem. Muscular sepoys guarded the gates, and the moment they saw Gupi and Bagha walk in with the large dholak, they bared all their teeth and rudely shouted, Ayo, where are you going? A startled Gupi answered, Sir, we are here to perform for the Raja. At this, the guards became even more angry and snarled back, Ha! Get going! Get lost this instant! Now Gupi screwed his nose and said, But we will surely go inside to meet the Raja. I promise. And within seconds, the shoes had carried them right before the king. Inside the palace, in the inner chambers, the Raja was enjoying a nap at that moment, while the Rani sat at his feet, fanning him as he slept. Gupi and Bagha reached right at that moment along with Bagha's remarkable dholak. The magic of the shoes had brought them into the room, despite the windows being shut, and that's when the real trouble began. The Rani fainted upon seeing them suddenly appear in the middle of the room and in front of her. The king woke up in a fright and started running hither-thither. Everybody in the palace started to run in all directions. The sepoys and the guards rushed in with their shields and scimitars. Seeing the commotion, Gupi and Bagha lost their ability to think. Now, it would just be sufficient if they had shouted only once, We want to go to such and such place. And the magical shoes would have actually taken them away immediately. But, frightened as they were, they completely forgot to say anything and began to run here and there as well. The guards caught them within seconds and the duo received a sound thrashing. Finally, the Raja bellowed, Put them in jail for a few days. After that, I will decide what to do with them. Either I will chop off their heads or feed them to the dogs. Hi, Gupi, hi, Bagha. The two had come to earn some money by performing before the Raja, and this is what they got in return. After getting a sound beating from all the guards, the duo was arrested and pushed into a dark cell. They could barely move in pain. But what truly bothered them was the loss of Bagha's dholak. Bagha howled uncontrollably, beating his chest, oh Gupida, I don't care about being thrashed or losing my life, but what about my prized dholak? By then, Gupi had composed himself. He calmed Bagha, patted him and said reassuringly, Why do you fear so, Dada? We have lost the dholak, but we still have the magical cloth bag and the shoes. We were quite foolish to have received such a thrashing. Now, what is done is done. Now, let us have some fun while we are still here. Feeling slightly more assured, Bagha asked, What kind of fun are you talking about, Gupida? See, let us have the fun with the food first. Then we can think of other types. So, Gupi plunged his hands inside the cloth bag and remarked, Let's see if you can serve us one pot of fragrant flavored pulao. And instantly, an aroma filled the cell. No one has ever tasted such pulao, not even the king of kings. And the pulao arrived in such a large pot that Gupi managed to pull it out of the bag after much difficulty. Then Gupi said, Fritters, curries, chutney, mithai, doi, rabri and sharbat, bring them all, quick. Soon, the dark cell was filled with utensils of gold and silver. How could two people finish so much food? The hearty meal helped ease their aches and pains. Finally, Bagha said, Dada, let us escape now, or they will feed us to their dogs. Are you for real? Gupi asked. You believe that we can be fed to the dogs even when we have our magical shoes? Let's just wait and see the fun. And once more, Bagha was reassured when he realized Gupi had something up his sleeves. 2 days passed. On the day of the verdict, Gupi arose before dawn, dipped his hands inside the cloth bag and said, We want royal garments for the two of us. Instantly the bag yielded such magnificent garments, nothing like that you have ever seen before. Then they changed into their new clothes, packed their clothes, the old ones, and utensils into a bundle, wore their shoes, and declared loudly, "Now, let us go gallivanting in the fields." Immediately, they found themselves in the massive field outside the palace. They hid their belongings, all of their old ones that they had in a potli, the cloth bag, in one corner of the field, and again approached the palace gates. The sepoys had seen them coming from a distance this time and had rushed indoors to inform the king instead of stopping them like the previous time. "Your Highness, there are 2 kings arriving." The Raja was curious. He too reached the main door and stood there eagerly. He cordially welcomed Bagha and Gupi and ushered them inside. They were brought into a guest room and had a battalion of royal staff appointed to look after their needs. After Gupi and Bagha had freshened up and a heavy meal had been served, the Raja came to see them, all the while thinking, they have to be really big and famous personalities. Finally, when the Raja asked Gupi, "You are the kings of exactly which country?" "Your Majesty, we are no kings." Gupi answered demurely, "We are merely your servants." But the king refused to believe Gupi's truth. Instead, he thought, what great human beings, humble and decent, how nicely they talk. He did not ask anything more and welcomed the duo into his court. It was the day of the verdict of the 2 urchins who had been arrested 3 days ago and put into the cell. As the time of the judgment approached, the guards went to fetch the 2 men from the cell, but they were nowhere to be found. The cell had been locked up all the while, but in spite of that, there was no one inside. What a commotion followed. The chief of police, Daroga Moshai, furiously rebuked all the guards, who begged with folded palms, "Lord, we know nothing. It is not our fault. We had locked the gates and had carefully guarded the cell. So I guess they were not humans but ghosts after all. Or how else can they just disappear like this?" Everyone believed this, including the Raja, who said, "Well, I think they must have been ghosts. Really?" This spared the Daroga Moshai from the king's wrath. Everyone agreed with the Raja too. Yes, true indeed. Both were ghosts. And the fact that the prisoners had been ghosts sent a chill down everyone's spine and left them sweating. They suddenly remembered Bagha's dholak and begged the king to burn it right away. "Raja Moshai, it belongs to a ghost," they said. "This is a dangerous instrument. Please do not keep it in your home." "Dear God, I will never keep a ghost dholak in my palace. Burn it right away." Now, the minute the Raja gave the orders, Bagha began howling. Bagha was inconsolable, and Gupi had a tough time comforting him. The mere mention of the order had sent him into a frenzy. Now, imagine what would happen if the dholak would be up in flames. Would Bagha be able to refrain himself from disclosing that the instrument belongs to him? They could get caught and lose their lives. Gupi was troubled seeing Bagha's behavior. He thought for a while and even considered running away without his friend. But that seemed impossible as they had taken off their shoes while having a seat in the royal court. In the meantime, all the ministers too saw Bagha howling suddenly, and everyone sat surprised. They thought that Bagha was probably ill, very ill, maybe even dying. Thus, the royal physician was summoned. He arrived, checked Bagha's pulse, and shook his head seriously. He then fed Bagha a small amount of laxative and then applied a thick layer of ointment on his tummy. known as a belistara, generally applied on very painful boils though. Then he said, if all of these fail and after all of this you still do not feel better, then we have to put in another belistara on your back. And if you still do not recover, then we have to put 2 on each side as well. Hearing the physician, Bagha's howling stopped at once. The people thought what a fantastic physician he was. A single dose of the medicine and everything was cured. But Bagha had stopped because the arrival of the physician meant the discussion about setting his dholak on fire had taken a back seat. He felt slightly relieved despite the throbbing pain of the belistara's layers. The Raja gently escorted Bagha to his room. He lay there and Gupi sat next to him, fanning his belistara. When everyone had left, Gupi finally remarked, "Chi chi, brother, chi chi. One should never cry like that in front of all. Now see what you have gotten yourself into." "No, what can I do? If I had not cried at that time," Bagha complained, "they would have burned my dholak by now. I might be uncomfortable and itchy at present, but at least my dear dholak is safe from all the shouting and the uproar I created." As Gupi and Bagha sat chatting in their room, the Raja returned to his court and was approached by the Daroga Moshai. And he whispered in the Raja's ears, "Your Majesty, with your permission, I wanted to inform you about something." "What is it?" the Raja asked. "You see that man who was howling and the other person with him? They are the 2 ghosts. I have recognized them," Daroga Moshai said. "Yes, truly. I too thought so," the Raja agreed. "This spells great trouble. What do we do now?" And a discussion started about finding the exact solution to the problem. Someone wanted to summon an exorcist. Another suggested setting Gupi and Bagha on fire when they were asleep. Everyone liked the proposals. But there was a problem with their execution. If you try to burn ghosts, there are chances of the entire palace catching fire in the process. Finally, after much discussion, it was decided that the 2 ghosts would be made to live in a large house by the garden, and the damage would be far, far less if that caught fire. The Raja added, "Take that dholak and keep it inside that house. When things will go up in the flame, good riddance if that dholak goes too." Now, Gupi and Bagha were extremely happy at the thought of moving to a lovely house. They never suspected anything was wrong, and they were delighted that they would get to stay in a distant place where they could practice their music in peace for as long as they liked, and there would not be anybody to bother them. The house allotted to them was a beautiful wooden structure. After shifting, Bagha recovered within no time at all. Then Gupi advised one day soon, "Bhai, it is not safe to remain here any longer. Let's move from here." But Bagha didn't want to leave. He answered, "Dada, this is such a beautiful place. We will not find another like this. Let's stay for a few days more." "Aha, I wish I had my dholak with me." And one day soon after that, as Bagha was roaming on the grounds and Gupi sat humming in one corner of the garden, suddenly there was a loud shouting. Bagha was screaming with all his might. Gupi could not understand the head or tail out of it, but could only make out his shouts of, "Oh Gupida! Oh Gupida! Oh Gupida!" Gupi came running to see Bagha dancing around the room, holding his dholak high up with both hands. Bagha was so excited at having his instrument back that he could barely compose himself. He was mumbling gibberish, occasionally shouting, "Oh Gupida! Oh Gupida!" Bagha was overjoyed. Half an hour went on like that. Bagha finally calmed down a bit, but again began in a frenzy. "Gupida, see my dholak. It was in this room only. What fun!" And he danced for 10 more minutes. Finally he said, "Dada, I have found my dholak. After going through so much trouble, let's sing a song to celebrate. I would like to play." "Not now. I am hungry now. First, let us eat. At night and after dinner, we can sit and relax and sing to our heart's content," Gupi replied. Meanwhile, the Raja had decided to set the house on fire that very night. Daroga Moshai was summoned and instructed to organize a massive feast at Gupi and Bagha's palace. Daroga Moshai was ordered to be present there with at least 60 of his men. After the feast, when Gupi and Bagha would go off to sleep, the men would set fire to the entire wooden house from all sides. This would also seal off all the exits. This was the plan. That night, the feast went very well. Gupi and Bagha waited for the invitees to depart so they could start their music session, while Daroga Moshai impatiently waited for Gupi and Bagha to fall asleep. Finally, when the duo understood that the inspector would only leave after they had gone off to sleep, Gupi and Bagha went to bed and pretended to snore loudly. Soon after, when there was silence all around, Gupi and Bagha assumed everybody had left and slowly came out to the veranda. Then they began singing. Now, Daroga Moshai had specifically instructed all his men to be on guard. He had said, "You should ensure that every exit is on fire. Double check before leaving." He had arrived to set fire to the stairs himself. But just as the flames began to burn bright and Daroga Moshai was preparing to escape the house, Bagha's dholak drummed up a cacophony as Gupi's lyrics joined in. Well, that was it. Neither Daroga Moshai nor his men could move from their places, and they perished with the house. But thanks to their magical shoes, Gupi and Bagha managed to escape unscathed, along with the dholak and the cloth bag. That night, only a handful of Daroga Moshai's men managed to escape. When they complained to the Raja, he couldn't believe his ears. The next day, he was even more scared when a few men approached him in his court and said that they had heard raucous music coming from the house with the large garden, following which they saw two men fly off into the air. Trembling, the Raja left the court and rushed to his bedchamber, where he hid under his bed and did not come out for an entire month. In the meantime, Gupi and Bagha had reached the same jungle where they had met each other many months ago. Feeling quite nostalgic and happy to be back where they had started, the duo thought of returning to their villages to meet their parents. Finally, Bagha said, "Gupida, remember this, where we had first met?" "Yes, I do." "Then we should celebrate that with some music," Bagha suggested. "Oh yes, you are right," Gupi agreed. "Then why delay? Let's start." And so Gupi began singing in his full-throated voice while Bagha began to beat his dholak with all his might. Now, while all this was happening, an incident had taken place at the palace of the king of Halla. A band of dacoits had fled after looting the royal treasury and had also kidnapped the two young princes of the Raja. The Raja had started, along with his men, chasing the dacoits who had entered the same jungle for shelter, where Gupi and Bagha were singing. Just as the dacoits entered the forest, they heard Gupi and Bagha. Frozen to their places, they could not move an inch. As Gupi and Bagha kept up their music all night long, they too stood glued to their places all night long. When morning arrived, the Raja of Halla could easily find the dacoits and then got them arrested. The king was extremely happy with Gupi and Bagha, for they made the entire endeavor possible. The princess too chipped in. "Father, we have never heard such strange music in our lives. We should take them along with us to our palace." And so the Raja of Halla told the duo, "You two should come with us. I will pay you a handsome salary of 500 rupees per month." Gupi was elated, but he had only one request. "Your Majesty, that's very generous of you, but can you please give us a holiday for 2 days? We would like to go and meet our parents and take their blessings before we begin work. Then we will head straight to your capital." The Raja agreed. "That's fine. Okay. We will rest in this jungle for the next 2 days. You can meet your parents and then come and find us here. We will leave for my palace after that." Now, ever since he had driven out his son, Gupi's father always remained upset. He was overjoyed to see him return. However, Bagha had no such fate. His parents were no more. And poor Bagha did not know this. When the villagers saw Bagha from a distance, they were not very happy, and they decided to keep him from entering the village. They said, "Goodness, here comes Bagha again." They said amongst themselves, "He will trouble us just like before. Let's beat him and drive him away again." Although Bagha implored, "I am here just for 2 days to meet my parents. I promise not to play my dholak at all. Please let me meet them." But the people did not listen. They bared their teeth, raised their fists, fetched sticks and attacked poor Bagha. Then they told him about the death of his parents and drove him away. Injured and devastated, Bagha somehow managed to save himself and ran. In torn clothes and bleeding all over, poor Bagha could not even grieve his parents' death. He decided to head over to Gupi's place. Gupi was sitting and chatting with his father at the doorstep of his hut. Suddenly, he saw a disabled and injured Bagha limping towards his home. Gupi rushed to his friend. "Goodness, what has happened to you? Why are you in such a condition?" Although he was in great pain, Bagha was unbelievably relieved to see Gupi. He answered with a smile, "Dada, I got narrowly saved. The foolish villagers almost destroyed my dholak as well." At Gupi's house, Bagha spent a very happy next 2 days, along with his parents. As they were leaving, Gupi informed his mother and father, "Please stay prepared. I will soon take some days off and come to fetch you both." A few months passed. Gupi and Bagha were happy at the palace of the Halla's Raja. They all achieved great fame as renowned musicians who performed like no other. The Raja of Halla had grown very fond of them. Not a single day went without him listening to Gupi and Bagha's music. And he would also confide in them from time to time about the nitty-gritties and practical details of everyday life. Basically, the Raja had grown to be very fond of both Gupi and Bagha and almost became like their close friend. Now one day, Gupi noticed the Raja sitting with a rather sullen face, deep in thought. He looked troubled. Finally, he called him and said, "Gupi, a problem has cropped up and I do not know what to do about this. You see, there's trouble brewing and there is a tough time ahead for all of us and my kingdom. You see, the Raja of Shundi is about to attack us and annex our kingdom. Now, let me add here, it so happens that the king of Shundi was the ruler who had tried to kill Gupi and Bagha earlier by burning them in his wooden outhouse. The minute he heard his name, Gupi replied thus, "Your Highness, do not worry. I will create such a funny situation that everything be all right again. Trust me. Just permit me." The Raja of Halla smiled gently and said, "Gupi, you are a gifted singer, but you know nothing about fights and battles and kingdom and warfare. Neither can you understand anything about the ongoings and the condition of the present state that we are in. Shundi's Raja has a massive army. How can I do anything about that? Please do permit me. I can try at least once." Gupi insisted. There is no harm in trying. Ultimately, the king assented and Gupi left to inform Bagha. The duo immediately sat for a long discussion. Bagha, who was particularly excited, said, "Dada, this time we must do something. But I am just anxious about one fact. If we need to run once more, I will probably forget about our shoes and run like a normal person. In the process, I will be beaten up black and blue again. That is what happened when I went back to my village. You remember what they did to me?" Anyways, Gupi's assuring words made Bagha determined to help the Raja of Halla, and they both began preparations the next day itself. According to their plan, they would leave for Shundi at night, roam the kingdom, and be back in Halla by morning. This continued for a few days, and it helped them collect all the information they needed about everything that was happening at Shundi. What Gupi and Bagha saw frightened them deeply. Shundi had a large, massive force that was very well prepared for battle, while Halla almost had none, and Halla was in no position to fight such a mighty army. A massive 10-day long puja was being held at Shundi's palace, and the Raja was preparing to leave for battle right after receiving blessings from the deity. Finally, after collecting as much intelligence as they could, Gupi and Bagha locked themselves in a room, dipped their hands into their magical cloth bag and said, "Give us a variety of sweetmeats, great to taste." And in an instant, all sorts of delectable sweetmeats came pouring out of the bag. No one had either seen or tasted anything like those. Gupi and Bagha took all the sweetmeats, arrived right at the top of the temple inside the Shundi's palace, and sat down. From there, they could see the many people gathered for the puja inside the temple. The place was buzzing with the chatter and the sounds of conch shells and bells. The air was redolent with the strong smell of incense sticks and frankincense, and the thick smoke in the air created a white screen all around. No one could see either Gupi or Bagha sitting on top of the temple. Suddenly, those gathered for the puja noticed sweets falling from the sky, and the chatter stopped. There was silence for a few seconds, and then a commotion ensued. Some fled, some jumped here and there, and a few brave hearts picked up some of the sweetmeats and took them near a light to inspect closely. Finally, a fearless soul broke off a piece and put it in his mouth and froze. His eyes widened, and he jumped to collect more from the courtyard and stuffed them in his mouth, all of it. Watching him devour the sweets that had fallen from the skies, the rest pounced on them, ran helter-skelter, and fought with each other to collect as many treats as possible to stuff them in their mouths. In the meanwhile, others already rushed to the Raja of Shundi to tell what had happened. "Your Highness, satisfied with your puja, the deity has sent his blessings from heaven. And what a blessing it is! The most delectable sweets ever known to man. Their taste is indescribable." The king wasted no time at all and rushed to the temple to see it for himself. But hi, alas! By then, all the prasad, the sweetmeats, was over. There was not even a speck lying around for him. Enraged, the king of Shundi growled at his subjects. "This is very unfair. I performed the ceremony and all of you finished the prasad. You could not spare even a few morsels for me. I will punish you, all of you, by impaling everybody." At this, all the people trembled and begged with folded palms. "Spare us! How can we finish your prasad? We had only eaten a few and magically all of it was over. Please spare us today. You will be given all the prasad from the puja held tomorrow." The king said, "Fine, so be it." And then added, "But be warned, don't forget your words." Early the next morning, Shundi's Raja had already arrived at the temple courtyard and sat waiting patiently for the prasad to fall from the sky. The rest gradually gathered and sat at a distance from the king, watching their ruler in fear. That day, the puja was the grandest of all days. Everyone thought that the deity would be more than happy with the arrangements made and would bless the Raja even more with even more scrumptious sweetmeats than the day before. At that moment, Gupi and Bagha, who had taken their seats on top of the temple once again, sat listening to the activity below. They were regally dressed and looked like kings themselves, with crowns on their heads, precious necklaces around their necks, and beautiful earrings adorning their ears. In fact, they rather resembled gods. Below, as though the air was thick with smoke, once again, rising from the burning frankincense amidst the festivities, the Raja sat with his eyes glued to the sky. Suddenly, Gupi and Bagha dropped a few sweetmeats and they hit the Raja's face straight. At first, he shrieked and jumped up, but then he rushed to pick up the food and stuffed it into his mouth. And then, well, he started to dance madly all across the courtyard. Gupi and Bagha saw this to be the right moment and they climbed down and appeared right before the dancing Raja. Their very appearance completely took everyone by surprise as they started to shout, "There, there! These are the gods that we have been praying to! There, there!" And they shoved and pushed to make some space so they could prostrate and lie before them to do pranam. The king was already on his knees, ready to seek the blessings of the gods. Finally, Gupi spoke, "O Shundi's Raja, we are both very happy to see your dance. Come and embrace us. You deserve it for your devotion." Embrace a deity? Shundi's Raja couldn't believe his ears. So the hugs began amidst shouts of "Jai Ho, Jai Ho, Jai Ho." And right then, Gupi and Bagha tightly embraced the king and said, "We would like to return." Within seconds, they were standing in their own room in Halla along with Shundi's Raja. In the meanwhile, the crowd in the temple courtyard stood stupefied with gaping mouths. When their Raja did not reappear, they all returned to their homes, nodding their heads and discussing amongst themselves. What a miracle we witnessed today, huh? So satisfied they were with our Raja's devotion that the gods returned to heaven with his mortal body. In reality, Shundi's Raja had fainted as Gupi and Bagha embraced him. He lay unconscious in Halla, and towards dawn he opened his eyes only to find the two ghosts who had once infiltrated his kingdom and had burned down his outhouse, sitting near his head. Terrified, he fell at their feet and begged, spare me, please do not eat me, please do not eat me. I will offer a sacrifice of 200 buffaloes to both of you." "Your Majesty, do not fear," Gupi comforted the Raja. "We are no ghosts and we are not going to eat you." However, the Shundi's Raja hardly felt assured and began to cry. While Gupi sat with the captured king, Bagha appeared before Halla's ruler and told him, "We have caught and brought the ruler of Shundi. What do we do now?" Halla's Raja, for him, he couldn't believe his ears. "What? Bring him over here," he ordered. When he was brought to the court, the Raja of Shundi realized that he was now under arrest. Not only had he failed to annex the kingdom of Halla, he was about to lose his life. But the Raja of Halla decided to spare his enemy's life and instead took over Shundi. Turning to Gupi and Bagha, the king of Halla said, "You, both of you, have saved my life and my kingdom, and if it weren't for you, I would have lost everything. How else can I repay you? I gift you half of Shundi and both my daughters in marriage." And after that, what a merry time it was. Gupi and Bagha became the sons-in-law of the Raja of Halla and owned half the kingdom of Shundi. Then they began spending their days practicing their music with great happiness. How happy were Gupi's parents then? Oh, they were elated. And there ends the story of Gupi, Gyen and Bagha by Upendrakishore Ray Chowdhury.